I am passing you over to David Ducheyne, who is in our next city in Belgium. Where are you based, David? Where in Belgium are you?
I'm in Bruges, but
Oh,
currently
lovely.
somewhere else. So the great city of Belgium, it's a joke, of course. It's a country, but it's small enough to be a city. Yeah.
Well, Bruges, I actually spent some time there in my childhood because my father's cousin lives there. So I used to enjoy the seaside.
Yeah,
So
great.
handing over to you, David. Thank you so much. That's it for me. Have a lovely session.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Ulrika. Hello, so I'm David. I'm from the great city of Belgium. And it's great to be here, and it's great to be invited for this crazy idea of an Inspirathon, 24 hours with 50 speakers. Is great. So we'll have 3 speakers in our region. I'm going to be the first one. So you're all muted, but if you want to share comments and so on, there's a Slack channel, and everything will be recorded. So if you join us now, welcome to this Inspirathon. What I'm going to talk about is something which is essential in daily life. I'm going to talk about the strategy of trust. The strategy of trust. Now, I have created a couple of years ago an organization which is called Autolith Consulting, which focuses on human behavior in organizations, leadership change, collaboration. But the name comes from something everybody has in their inner ear, an otolith or otoliths, which makes sure that you can feel direction, balance, and acceleration. If you don't have it, if it's not working, then you're falling on the ground. And what you are seeing now are the otoliths of a fish, because a fish has no contact to the floor and they need more balance. So their otoliths are bigger than human otoliths, but we all have them. Now, why do I tell you this? Because actually, if we look at behavior in organizations, we often say, well, strategies fail or are successful, but it's never the case. It's always the behavior of people. So strategies do not fail. It's people who fail. And the problem with behavior, if you talk about behavioral strategy, is that behavior is messy. People bring their personalities, people bring their motives, their needs, their biases. And so behavior is something that you would like to make more stable and predictable. And actually, we should not do that. If we want to make strategies a success, we must take into consideration human needs and human behavior. And actually, if you want to make it right, you have to start with human behavior, to look what are possibilities, what are maybe constraints. And then if you do that, your strategy might be successful. Very often, strategies in organizations start with some rational idea on financial targets and so on and so forth, but that doesn't inspire, that doesn't motivate people so much. So we really have to understand human behavior. And if you look at strategic human capabilities that make strategies work, then there are 3. There's leadership, there's collaboration, and there's learning. And they are coinciding with the direction, the balance, and the acceleration people need to make strategies work. Now, what is underpinning on these 3 human capabilities is the trust. None of these will work if there is no trust. And we'll go into trust a bit later. But if trust is not there, learning becomes risky, collaboration becomes a weakness, and leadership, it becomes impossible. It becomes more coercive, more directive than needed. So we need to invest so much in trust, and it's the starting point of any strategy. If you look at your must-win battles in strategy, then one of the things that you need is collaboration and trust at board level or at executive committee level. That's one of the conditions to make strategies work. And very often we neglect that. Very often it is not present. Yesterday I was with a management team of a big international organization, And we worked only on trust. And you can say, well, why would you do that? Because it is so important. And if you don't have trust or trustworthiness as a person, then the cost is immense. Everything becomes difficult. Every debate becomes a conflict. Every conflict becomes a kind of a war. So we need to focus on that trust. Now, let's look into a definition of trust. This is a scientific definition. It's the willingness of a party to be vulnerable. So vulnerability is so important if we want to establish trusts. And it's vulnerable to the actions of another party based on the expectations that the other will perform an action that is important to me as a truster, irrespective of the ability to monitor or control that other party. That means that I put my fate in the hands of someone else by being vulnerable. That means that I give something. I'm not sure that I will receive something, but I give. And we know that trust is always a matter of taking a risk. Now, there's also a formula of trust. Trustworthiness is actually a function of the competence, the loyalty, and the integrity that someone has. The three are important to establish the trustworthiness of a person. And so we look at people and we analyze this. We look at their competence, their loyalty, their integrity, and they look at us and they say, is this person competent? Are they loyal? Are they integer? Now, competence is fairly easy to assess. You can do it or you cannot. You can do it well or you cannot do it well. But loyalty and integrity, that is very often difficult to fathom. You have to see a pattern before you can judge someone's character, intention, ethics. And so we have to put our faith in people's hands, assuming that they are going to be loyal and integer, which doesn't mean that you have to be naive. You walk the streets and you can be cautious. You will analyze where it's safe and where it's unsafe. So you look into certain things. So you shouldn't be naive about that. Now, how can you prove that you are loyal and integer as a person? It's by showing your vulnerability, by giving, by being in the proximity of people, by being human, actually. It's showing your humanity. And if you can do that, then people will say, okay, this person is really trustworthy. He's loyal to me. She's integer. They are showing ethics. They're acting in my interest. They are transparent. They are saying what they do and doing what they say. And they are following certain values that are also close to mine. And in assessing trustworthiness, competence is important, but it's only partly important. We can forgive people for being less competent, but if they're less loyal or integer, then we have a problem. So this is actually the science of trust. Now, if we trust someone, we will exert less control. So we take a risk. I will trust someone, and I'm not going to check upon them because I think they're loyal, integer, and competent. If they're less trustworthy, I will increase my control, my checking. I will invest in that. It's a cost. Controlling is a cost. Trusting is a risk. The more someone is trustworthy, I will reduce the cost of control. Not to zero, because that would be naive. And the control can never be 100%, because that would be too expensive. But I will adapt. Someone who comes into my organization fresh from school, I will not trust because they will not be competent. So I will not control them, but I will keep an eye on them to see if they're doing well, to see if they're not hitting a wall. But as they progress, I will reduce that, and I will assume they become autonomous and self-reliant. But still, there will be some risk that I will take. Now, there's some research on who we trust. Well, people think that 63% of business leaders are purposely trying to mislead people by saying things they know are false or gross exaggerations. So 63% of people think they're being manipulated by business leaders. This is Edelman research. That means that in your relationship with managers, with business leaders, with CEOs, people are wary. And imagine what the consequence is of that. Imagine the costs of having people think, are they now telling the truth? This is such a high cost that we cannot imagine, and still 63% to almost two-thirds of humanity thinks that business leaders are misleading, which is of course a big issue. Now, trust is all about perception, and there's a case of P&O ferries where P&O sacked people massively in one blow by showing a video message to people saying that they were dismissed. So that kind of act creates, of course, distrust. Dismissal is always a matter of, or is also always, I would say, jeopardizing trust. But if you look at this action, you are doing something which is creating distrust, not only with the people that you have to or want to dismiss, but also with the people that are left behind. How do you treat people? And it's also creating distrust with other stakeholders, uh, the community, the suppliers, the customers, and so on and so forth. So it's always a matter of perception. We look at people and we think, how trustworthy are they? Now, coming from there, you could design a trustworthy organization. You can design, you can create an architecture of trust. And if you want to have a strategy that is based on trust, you should not leave it up to coincidence and goodwill. You have to really design it. And it means that you have to look at the quality of your leadership. Is it sustainable? Is it trustworthy? You have to look at psychological safety, inclusion, deep listening, personalization. That is the context that you create. Do people feel that they can speak up? Do people feel that they can be themselves? Do people feel that they can make mistakes? In that context, in that kind of culture, you might create trust. And then, of course, behavior, trust-based behavior. It sounds simple, but actually, I think we should hire people based on trust and on their trustworthiness. If that is not there, if the ethics are not strong enough, then we have an issue. And like this, we can create value. And what is crucial in creating that context, in building that leadership, and in developing people for trust-based behavior is the consistency. I mean, in every instance that you offer, every experience that people have must be a confirmation of the trust that is present in an organization, either by an individual person, a leader, or even systemic. It must be a proof that that there's trust, that the company, the organization is trustworthy and its leaders are trustworthy. Now, the costs, starting with leadership quality, the cost of bad leadership, that is incredible. There's been research on that, and I work a lot with leaders on how to develop their trustworthiness. It's not that they don't that they're not trustworthy, so I cannot change someone in terms of from an unethical person into an ethical person, but we can make sure that the actions of people, of leaders, are trustworthy, that they are inspiring trust. And some people, sometimes we are clumsy and we do things, and then in the eye of the beholder we become untrustworthy, even when it's not our intention. But actually, people do not care about intention. It's about the experience that they have. And so leadership quality is crucial in building that trust. It's somewhere we have to start. Now the question is, going maybe back to this chart. If you look at this chain, this value chain, you have to measure it. You can measure it. You can evaluate that. So if we look at leadership quality, we can follow that up. We can check if someone is versatile, is trustworthy. We can measure that, and we can guide people through development phase. And the same goes for the context. If we can measure the psychological safety, the way people feel or not feel included, the way that we are listening to people, and also the way of personalization, then we can really assess the context in terms of the trustworthiness. Feedback on trust-based behavior is crucial. People don't always know when they're trustworthy or not. They don't check enough. And if they don't check, people should tell them. So feedback is also very crucial. Now, I would like to spend some time also on personalization of work in this context. Personalization means that you will adapt the work context to the needs and the strengths of people. Personalization is a way to express that you're empathic to people as a leader or as an organization, that you listen to people and that you take into consideration what they need. For me, this is the litmus test for trust, the litmus test for trustworthiness. If you're not willing to listen to people and what they need and what they are looking for, then people will think, well, actually, that person, that organization is not loyal to me. Loyalty, remember, is one of the three pillars of trust. That person is not loyal, and therefore I will not trust them. If I can express my needs, if I can say what I would like to, and the organization and the leader is taking that into consideration, then I will feel a trust there, trust in me, but also trust back towards the leaders and towards the organization. So this personalization or customization, if you want, is so crucial in showing that the organization is trustworthy, that the organization is loyal and integer. Now, the thing is that if you want to be consistent in that value chain, you know that you will do things that might harm trust. You know that sometimes you have to take or make difficult decisions that will make people doubt. They will doubt about why are you doing that. Difficult decisions that are inherent in business life, in the life of every organization. And then the thing is that you can do them in an empathetic way, in a way that does not destroy the trust. To give you an example, in one of the restructurations we had in the great city of Belgium, there was a plant closure, and so the director, the management chose not to come and announce it, but ask local management to do that. Of course, it's safe to do that for yourself, but you create only distrust and then emotions and then negative behavior afterwards. And so this is something that you really have to do if you can listen deeply, if you can be or show empathy, and if you can take into consideration the needs of people, the behavioral needs of people, then you will build trust. Only then. If you only assume that people will tick the boxes and will follow because you tell them to, or because there's some strategic targets, they might follow you, but the trustworthiness will be low. And then you know everything you say will be put in doubt, will be checked, will be questioned, and you will have actually a loss of energy. Now, I said you can measure all of that. What we're working on is what we call the trust indicator. The trust indicator is actually a very simple tool to measure trust, trustworthiness of organizations and of leaders. It's something that you can check every once in a while to see if people still see their leadership and their organization as being trustworthy. It's not the same as psychological safety, because psychological safety is the consequence of being trustworthy. So my advice to you is check the trustworthiness in your organization, because it's the basis of a lot of value that you create, or when you don't have it, you will destroy value. So this is what I wanted to talk about from my point of view. So trust as the essential element of strategy and strategic behavior.